devastated by what's happened, by the loss of Don. Don is still in hospital, the loss of Ian and Heather and Gail.
Erin Patterson told staff at Leongatha Hospital that she thought she might have gastro, a bit of nausea and some stomach cramps, but nothing too serious. Dr. Chris Webster had just spent his morning treating two of her relatives, and they were both extremely unwell. So unwell, in fact, that their organ systems were beginning to shut down, and they weren't the only ones. In another hospital, Don and Gail Patterson, Erin's in-laws, were deteriorating fast. All of them had been happy together, sharing a meal at Erin's house just the day before. So if Erin was now falling ill too, then she needed urgent medical care. Now this entire family was all living a shared nightmare. You won't see this one coming. Here we go. By the way, this is Dark Case, and you can call me Jack. I bring you rare and unseen true crime cases, as well as other things that you may later regret knowing, with multiple uploads every single week. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, then make sure you join the Dark Case family now by hitting subscribe and turning all notifications on. And now for today's silly little question. Would you rather watch nothing but Hallmark Christmas movies, or nothing but horror movies for the rest of your life? I think I'd actually choose Christmas movies. Let me know down in the comments. All of your support over on Patreon, as well as via channel memberships right here on YouTube, are so appreciated, and I really can't thank you all enough. However, thank you. And now, on with the video. In court, Ian Wilkinson remained calm and soft-spoken. He had survived the lunch, but only barely. He spent 7 weeks in hospital. He was in a coma, had a liver transplant, but on the stand, he still managed to keep his composure. He told the jury that he didn't know the perpetrator particularly well. She was just his wife's niece-in-law. He and Heather had seen her at church occasionally. Things were friendly, he said. She just seemed like a normal person. On July the 29th, 2023, Ian and Heather had been invited to a casual Sunday lunch at Erin's house in Leongatha. They weren't the only guests. Don and Gail Patterson, Erin's former in-laws, were there too. That couple had been a part of Erin's life for nearly 2 decades. Erin had reportedly invited the group under the guise of sharing a difficult health update. But more on that later. For the main course, she served up individual beef wellingtons. Rich, savoury parcels of beef, mushroom paste and pastry. She served this with mashed potatoes, green beans and gravy. 4 servings all went out on grey plates for the guests, and Erin took a serving for herself on an orange plate. It sounds like she was being nice enough to let her guests have matching crockery. Simon Patterson, Erin's estranged husband, had been invited too, but he'd pulled out the day before. So a 6th beef Wellington was left in the fridge, just in case. The group said grace together, they ate, they chatted and they laughed. Heather Wilkinson made a quiet comment as they were finishing their meal. I've puzzled about it since lunch. Is Erin short of crockery? By the very next morning, all 4 of the guests were now violently ill. On August the 4th, 5 days after the lunch, Gail Patterson and Heather Wilkinson sadly passed away within just hours of each other. Both had suffered irreversible liver failure. Both had been told that there was little hope. Sadly, Gail had been too sick to qualify for a transplant. Heather didn't even get the chance. The next day, Don Patterson, Simon's father, also passed. He had received a liver transplant, but his body had rejected it. He didn't make it through the night. At this point, 3 of the 4 guests, all of whom had eaten the home-cooked lunch, were now gone. And the 4th, Heather's husband, Ian, was now in a medically induced coma. Clearly, something had gone terribly wrong with that lunch. Back in Melbourne, Erin, who had hosted the meal, was now sat across from a detective. She was quite unemotional, even flat. She said that she'd accidentally mixed some store-bought mushrooms with some other mushrooms that she'd dehydrated earlier in the year. Where did those mushrooms come from? She said she couldn't remember. Maybe an Asian grocer, or maybe Mount Waverley. She added that she probably paid cash for the mushrooms. There were no receipts, and the mushrooms came in just plain packaging. She also claimed that she had been sick too, that she had vomited, that she'd had diarrhea and even gotten medical assistance. However, her hospital records showed no sign of the same organ failure as everyone else. In fact, they said that there were no toxins in her system whatsoever. And strangely, she discharged herself just 24 hours later, which was against medical advice.
I understand you went down to the hospital and got treatment and that. What kind of treatment did you get?
Oh, they hooked me up to a drip.
A drip?
Yeah. They said that because we're concerned. So Dr. Webster had to leave. I think he was at the end of his shift, and he passed on to another doctor, Dr. Foote. And she said to me, because the concern is that everybody's eaten something that hurts your liver, we need to give you this protective medicine. And so there was saline and acetyl something or other, I don't know what it was. But she said we need to give you this and then put you in an ambulance up to Melbourne where they can give you more, I don't know what the word is, more, where they can care for you better. Yeah. So I got saline and this other stuff and went in an ambulance up.
Okay.
And when doctors said that they needed to test her children, who she claimed had also eaten the leftovers from that lunch, Erin hesitated for hours. One nurse recalled pleading with her, they can be scared unalive or dead. Eventually the children were tested, and both of them were fine, with no trace of poison whatsoever in their systems. Thankfully, they also had no symptoms. In fact, it was as if they hadn't eaten the same meal at all, even though it was said that they did. So this raised the question, had the leftovers that the children were said to have eaten ever actually existed?
And you gave them the PIN code for your gate?
Correct.
And directed them to the bin where there were some leftovers?
Correct.
What are those leftovers that you directed them to?
They were the uneaten food from the lunch.
Okay. All right. So you helped them in getting that so it could be sampled?
Because my kids ate the meal too.
Yeah.
But there was stuff that was left over and it went straight in the bin. And so when I went to the hospital and they said they were concerned that everyone ate some contaminated food, I said, well, there's the leftovers in the bin, you can have it.
Yeah.
Feel free to look through it.
Yep.
And I said, I'll go and get it if you want. And they said, well, that's fine, you need to go on a drip. We'll call the police. And I said, well, that's fine, just let them know I need to give them the PIN code.
Yep.
So they did that and a bag of food appeared a bit later.
Yep. So yeah.
Yep.
So thank you for helping us locate that.
It's fine.
All right.
Long before that fatal lunch, ex-husband Simon Patterson believed someone was trying to end him, specifically his estranged wife, Erin. He hadn't told many people, because he wasn't sure himself at first. But in November of 2021, after eating a container of penne bolognese that Erin had sent home, Simon fell violently ill. So ill in fact that he had to spend the night in hospital. I had the idea I got sick from Erin's food, he told police later. I didn't give it too much thought at the time. But then it happened again. In May of 2022, the couple went camping in the high country. Erin cooked a chicken korma over the fire, a meal that Simon didn't see her prepare. And terrifyingly, just a few days later, he was in a coma. Part of his bowel had to be surgically removed to save his life. He was so bad, in fact, that doctors told his family to say goodbye twice. But thankfully, he survived. By September, though, it happened again, this time after eating a vegetable wrap during a coastal day trip. Simon's symptoms escalated fast. There was nausea, slurred speech, muscle failure, and seizures. By the time he reached the hospital, the only parts of his body that he could still move were his neck and lips. That's when a family friend, Dr. Chris Ford, told him to start keeping a food diary. In early 2023, Simon returned to Dr. Ford with a sad suspicion. He believed that Erin was trying to poison him. He told Dr. Ford about a batch of cookies that Erin had sent over. She said that their daughter had baked them, but Erin kept calling to check if Simon had eaten one yet. He hadn't. In fact, he never did. With all of this going on, Simon quietly changed his medical power of attorney, and told only a handful of people about his fears, including his sister, Anna. When Anna learned about the lunch that Erin was planning in July, she called her parents to warn them. Dad said, "No, we'll be okay," she later told the court. 5 days later, she was standing in a hospital chapel beside her brother, and by then their parents, aunt and uncle were all down the hall, clinging onto life. That's when Simon told the family what he hadn't told them before. "I didn't think she'd ever hurt anyone else," he said. "I thought it was just me." 3 days after the dreaded lunch, Erin Patterson drove to the Coonawarra tip. She parked beside the green waste bins and got out of her car, in her hands a food dehydrator. CCTV footage later showed her tossing it into the skip. Casual, quick, no hesitation. By the time investigators recovered it, the damage was already done. However, inside, forensic experts could still find what they needed: Erin's fingerprints. There were also traces of Amanita phalloides, aka the death cap mushroom. Back at Erin's house, police found the dehydrator's instruction manual, which was tucked away in a kitchen drawer. Despite what she told police, she had owned the dehydrator. In fact, she'd used it, posted about it on Facebook, saying, "I've been hiding powdered mushrooms in everything." She wrote in one group message, adding, "Mixed it into chocolate brownies yesterday." The kids had no idea. Those posts had been deleted before police arrived, but digital forensics got them back. But if she was innocent, why was she lying? Erin later claimed that she got rid of the dehydrator because people were accusing me of poisoning them. She'd also been using 3 phones at the time of the lunch, 2 of which had gone missing, and the 3rd of which had been factory reset 4 times. In court, a forensic tech described the digital wipes as deliberate and thorough. This wasn't just about erasing recipes. There was evidence there of something far more planned. To the police, it looked like a panicked plan. To the prosecutors, it looked like guilt. But what would it look like to the jury? Back to the table on the day of the lunch. By the time the orange cake came out, everyone was already full. Don had eaten part of Gail's Wellington. He liked steak and she didn't. There was laughter, banter, the usual mid-meal teasing. Things like, make sure the husbands do the dishes. And then came the medical news that Erin said she had to share. She told everyone at the table that she had cancer. The room went quiet. The 2 couples could only offer advice. They could suggest ways to tell her children. They prayed together again, this time for strength and for healing. That detail stuck with Ian Wilkinson. He remembered it vividly during the trial. But Erin later disgustingly admitted the cancer story was just a lie. She said that she'd actually been planning to get weight loss surgery, and she was embarrassed about it, so she made the cancer up as a cover-up. However, there were other lies too. Lies about the mushrooms, lies about being sick, lies about her relationship with her in-laws. To the police, Erin said that Don and Gail were like parents to her, that she loved them. But in a Facebook message sent months earlier, Erin had written, "I'm sick of this poop. I want nothing to do with them." So which Erin was real? The grieving daughter-in-law who had baked a complicated meal to reconnect with her family? Or the woman serving poison on purpose, and then watching everyone eat it while keeping her own plate clean? When detectives questioned why she wasn't as sick as the others, Erin offered an explanation. She said that she'd eaten too much cake and then thrown it up. She now claimed that she was bulimic and she had been since her teens. That's why she didn't get sick. That's why there were no toxins in her system. The police asked, "Why didn't you say any of this sooner?" And Erin's answer was quiet. It was this stupid knee-jerk reaction to dig deeper and keep lying. Coram Borough is the kind of town where everyone knows everyone. The population was just under 5,000. It had tidy streets and rolling hills, a close-knit community built on trust, church and routine. It's also where Erin Patterson's victims had lived for decades. Don and Gail Patterson were deeply embedded in the town. Don was a beloved schoolteacher, and half of the older locals had once been his students. Gail volunteered. She brought meals to neighbours. Heather and Ian Wilkinson were known for their kindness. Ian was the local Baptist pastor, so their sudden passings were a real trauma for the community. And as more details leaked out about the mushrooms, the plate colours, the Facebook lies, the grief turned into a deep disbelief, and then turned into anger. The church posted a notice for the 3 lost lives. They were very special people who loved God and loved to bless others, it read. Simple yet heartbreaking and powerful. But not everyone wanted to talk about it. Some locals shut it down completely, while others whispered in cafes and shops. Had she really done it on purpose? Why had she done it? Meanwhile, outside Erin's deserted home in Leongatha, the grass went wild. Her house sat empty, guarded by a tarped fence and a sign warning off trespassers. Still, people came by to take a look. Locals say that they saw tourists drive by. One even claimed that a tour bus rolled past the gate. In nearby Outram, another small town, residents were horrified to learn that death-cap mushrooms had been spotted growing right along their own fences. But this was useful information. The prosecution could then use cell tower data to suggest that Erin went mushroom foraging in both Outram and Loch. And to back this up further, amateur mushroom spotters have posted photos of the exact locations to a site called iNaturalist. One of those spotters, a local named Funky Tom. This man would later testify at the trial. This part of the world is unusually quiet, the farmer said. Now everyone knows our town for murder. The trial began on April 29, 2025, in the small, unassuming town of Morwell, 150 kilometres east of Melbourne. From the start, it felt different. 12 jurors, 3 reserves, over 50 witnesses, live media camped outside, and a courtroom that would soon broadcast the sentencing for the first time in Victoria's history. At the centre of it all, Erin Patterson. She remained cool and silent, often completely blank-faced. She sat quietly each day watching her future unravel.
Jen, the Supreme Court has released the vision of Erin Patterson handing over her mobile phone to homicide detectives in August of 2023. This is a month after she poisoned 4 of her relatives with death cap mushrooms baked into a beef Wellington dish. They're sitting at the very table that she served this lunch at. We see her handing over a red mobile phone. This is the phone that the prosecution called her dummy phone, that they said her real phone was never discovered. We hear a bit of exchange between them, and there's some confusion over the pin for this phone. They've also released vision of Erin Patterson at the tip. She's throwing out her food dehydrator that she claimed that she never owned.
The prosecution said that Erin had fed her guests a meal that had been laced with death cap mushrooms, and it was done deliberately. They pointed to the dehydrator, to the digital wipes, to the trip to the dump, and the multiple phones, as well as her lies about her cancer. They also revealed her internet history, visits to foraging websites, posts about mushrooms in Facebook groups, and detailed photos of what looked like death caps that were being weighed on kitchen scales. But in a way perhaps most chilling, they didn't actually present a motive. Only you know why you committed them. Justice Beale would later say, I will not speculate. However, the defence would lean hard on that same thing. No motive, no murder, they said. They painted Erin as panicked, not predatory. A flawed but loving mother. A woman who made a tragic mistake and then tried to cover it up out of fear. She's not on trial for lying, her barrister told the jury. This is not a court of moral judgment. However, her lying was a problem. She had lied about the mushrooms. She had lied about the dehydrator, about herself being sick. She even lied about having cancer, which for me is just crazy. The jury was asked to consider a haunting question. Had all of this just been an accident? Or had Erin done it on purpose and was now trying to hide it?
Back in the witness box for a second day, Simon Patterson's marriage was under the microscope. The court heard he and Erin Patterson separated amicably in 2015, but in late 2022, their relationship soured. A tense text exchange between the two was shown to the jury in which the pair argued about 70th birthday celebrations for Simon's mother, Gail Patterson. When asked if she would be attending, Erin replied, "I might pass, thanks, as I'd rather not go somewhere I'm not welcome." What I reckon is that everybody forgot to actually invite me to this thing, and I feel very, very hurt about that, and your response is to say I'm being ridiculous. Simon replied, "You're as far off the mark as you possibly could be on this. I know they would love you to be there." The jury heard the following month Ms Patterson requested Simon start paying child support after she discovered he'd listed his marriage status as separated on a tax return. Another text exchange was shown to the jury where Erin requested a meeting with Simon and his parents to discuss expenses for their children. Mr Patterson told the court Erin had become extremely aggressive and he thought the only way to solve their issues was to engage a mediator. He told the court Ms Patterson was on good terms with his parents, but as Don and Gail lay fighting for life in hospital, suffering from death cap mushroom poisoning, she never checked on their condition. It intrigued me that she never actually asked. Ms Patterson has admitted to faking a cancer diagnosis, which the prosecution claims she used to lure them to her Leongatha home for the lethal lunch. But she denies purposely poisoning the beef Wellingtons. Simon Patterson told the court Erin never told him she had ovarian cancer. He also revealed that she hates hospitals. She struggled a lot with mental illness, postnatal depression. She did tell me a few years ago that she had been diagnosed with chronic fatigue or lupus, motor neuron disease, multiple sclerosis. I forget the term that describes them. Simon Patterson's cross-examination will continue when the trial resumes on Monday.
After 9 weeks of testimony and 6 days of deliberations, the jury returned. Erin was guilty on 3 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder. Erin didn't flinch when the verdict was read. There was no real reaction at all, just a long blink. As the court cleared, a few of the victims' family members stayed behind. They just sat in silence. Some of them cried, because on this day, justice had finally arrived. However, that one question still lingered in the air. Why? On September the 8th, 2025, the Supreme Court of Victoria did something that it had never done before. It let the public watch. Inside courtroom 4, a single television camera, broadcasting with a 10-second delay, captured the moment that Erin Patterson was sentenced. She stood in silence as Justice Christopher Beale delivered his words. 3 life sentences for the murders of Don and Gail Patterson, as well as Heather Wilkinson. 25 years for the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson, all to be served concurrently. However, there will be no possibility of parole for 33 years. That means that Erin Patterson will be 82 before she can even ask for release. The judge called her crimes a betrayal of trust on an unfathomable scale. He said that she had shown no remorse, that she had watched her guests eat a meal that she knew was laced with poison, and then she did nothing as they died. He also acknowledged what prison would look like for her. 15 months in near solitary confinement, 22 hours a day in her cell, no contact with other inmates. Her notoriety now meant that she was a high-risk prisoner for others and for herself.
For the attempted murder of Ian Wilkinson, I sentence you to 25 years imprisonment. For the murder of Heather Wilkinson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. For the murder of Gail Patterson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. For the murder of Don Patterson, I sentence you to life imprisonment. All sentences are to be served concurrently. The total effective sentence is life imprisonment, and I fix a non-parole period of 33 years. I declare that you have served 676 days by way of pre-sentence detention. Finally, and by consent, I make the disposal order sought by the prosecution. Would you please remove Ms Patterson?
My purpose here today is to give some well-earned thanks. Firstly, to Victoria Police, in particular the Homicide Squad and the team led by Detective Stephen Eppingstall. They made a professional, efficient and effective investigation into what happened at the lunch. They brought to light the truth of what happened with the death of 3 good people. We're grateful for their skills that brought this truth to light. And I'm also very grateful for the kindness and compassion they showed us, me and my family, throughout the long process that has brought us to this day. They've done a wonderful job.
Ian Wilkinson, the lone survivor, had offered Erin forgiveness during a pre-sentence hearing. "I am no longer Erin Patterson's victim," he said. "She has become the victim of my kindness." Simon Patterson, Erin's estranged husband, said the hardest part wasn't just losing his parents, it was watching his children lose their mother. "They've been robbed with the kind of relationship with their mum that every child deserves," he said. Justice Beale gave Erin until October the 6th to appeal, but so far she hasn't. She does, however, maintain her innocence. She still insists that it was all an accident. But the court didn't believe her, the country doesn't believe her, nor do I.
Convicted triple murderer Erin Patterson could be facing even more time behind bars. Crown prosecutors are reviewing her 33-year sentence, concerned it was too lenient.
Jailed for a minimum 33 years, mushroom cook Erin Patterson was spared a life behind bars last week. But her so-called good fortune could be short-lived, with the Director of Public Prosecutions reviewing the case for appeal.
Look, from the outset I thought it was a bit light on, given the gravity of the offence that she was convicted of. I would have expected life with no parole.
So did Crown Prosecutor Jane Warren, but Justice Christopher Beale settled on a lighter punishment, taking into account Erin's harsh prison conditions in solitary confinement. There are now fears it'll set a precedent.
Well, that's the problem with our sentencing system. Precedent plays a major role on it, and in future they'll use this as a precedent case with other defence barristers.
An OPP spokesperson told 7 News the appeals process is stringent and difficult to achieve. The office still deciding what to do.
I think it's definitely a powerful and a clear message from the DPP. We want this closed. If you're even thinking about putting an appeal, we're going to come back and say that the sentence wasn't harsh enough.
Erin Patterson maintains her innocence, but it's unclear whether her team will challenge her convictions. Both sides have just 19 days left to lodge an appeal.
It could go either way. It could be harsher or it could be lower.
Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.